From ramming a suspect with a police car, humiliating innocent people at their homes, to assaulting and tasing students. Friend or foe, the police force is infamous for taking quite drastic measures when confronting suspects. It's not uncommon to see cops take things too far when dealing with a situation, especially when they largely get away with it scot-free. But times are changing. People becoming more aware of their civil rights, and they're not afraid to step up to authorities who would dare to violate them. In today's video, we will discuss times when cops lost lawsuits. Number 1. Sergeant Mario Cardona versus Daniel Garza. Thrown down and pinned to the ground, Daniel Garza was helpless. The cop who lived across the street, Officer Mario Cardona, someone who Garza had known for years, was on the verge of breaking his wrist. But what triggered Cardona to go this far? It turns out his actions were fueled by anger at Garza, who he accuses of trying to kidnap his stepdaughter. Cardona's stepdaughter, Naomi Villanueva, and Garza had been in a relationship before this incident. Their relationship lasted for about 2 years after she turned 18, while Garza was in his mid-20s. However, their relationship had hit a rocky course, becoming a mess of constant arguments and fights. According to court reports, Villanueva had moved out of her parents' house in Whittier and moved in with her friend to a house in Downey, about 20 minutes away. In her testimony, Villanueva told the court that Garza showed up at her new house one night in May 2015. She said that her ex-boyfriend saw her and her friend hanging out with some other guys, got angry, and accused her of cheating. He then allegedly grabbed her hand and took her in his car to Whittier. Garza, however, disputes these claims. According to his account, Villanueva got in the car willingly. He disputes the kidnapping claims, saying it wouldn't make sense for him to kidnap her and then take her to her parents' house. Villanueva's family, particularly her mother, Sherry Cardona, was not happy with what happened to their daughter. Sherry, also an officer of the law, even notified the Downey Police Department about the incident. On May 14, 2015, her husband, Mario Cardona, was off duty and coming home in his truck. That's when he saw Garza out in his yard across the street doing Pilates. Cardona ordered Garza to come down to the street, and as soon as he did, Cardona began his assault. Both sides claimed that they weren't the aggressor, but a neighbor who saw the incident took Garza's side in his testimony.
Help me, please. He's abusing me. Okay.
I saw Cardona as the aggressor, swinging and punching Daniel, who was ducking his head, taking more of a protective stance, trying to protect his head from being struck, a neighbor, Ramsey Muro, said in court. When sheriff deputies arrived at the scene, Cardona told them that the Downey Police Department had an arrest warrant against Garza, but there actually wasn't any warrant. When the deputies contacted Downey Police for information, they were told that Sherry Cardona's kidnapping complaint was based on second-hand information. Garza was not under arrest. But according to what one of the deputies wrote, he noticed redness on Garza's face, bruises and abrasions to his knees, and redness on his wrists. Soon after the incident, Garza filed a complaint against his neighbor. 9 months later, he received a letter from the LA Police Chief Charlie Beck saying that Cardona's actions were justified and that he had done nothing wrong. This made Garza furious. In May 2016, he filed a federal lawsuit against Cardona, Chief Beck, and the city of Los Angeles. The charges listed were alleging false arrest, unreasonable search and seizure, excessive force, assault and battery, negligence, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. To make his case even stronger, a video of the encounter filmed by one of Garza's neighbors was also presented at the trial. Speaking in defense of the city was the former Deputy City Attorney Michael Amarian. The U.S. District Judge, Stephen V. Wilson, presided over the hearing where Amarian described Cardona's actions as despicable and vile. "If that isn't malice, I don't know what is," said Amarian. The jury agreed with the city attorney. The court found that Cardona was acting with malice as an off-duty, and on June 26, 2017, they ordered him to pay Garza $210,000 in damages. On top of that, the court added another $664,000 in attorney's fees and $26,000 for post-trial costs. The city of LA effectively washed its hands clean with the ruling, refusing to take responsibility for Cardona's actions. The city even refused to indemnify the officer, forcing him to pay for the charges out of his own pocket. Left hung out to dry, Cardona filed for bankruptcy relief but was denied. The bankruptcy court ruled that the law does not allow Cardona to discharge a debt resulting from his own malicious actions. Cardona's total debt from this whole encounter is a whopping $899,267. Just weeks after the verdict, however, Cardona got promoted to sergeant, a decision that was signed off by Chief Beck himself. Commenting on this outrageous step by the chief, Garza's lawyer, Jim DeSimone, said, "The LAPD had all the evidence we used at trial, but exonerated Cardona and then promoted him. This illustrates why people are out in the streets. Officers who injure and kill people unnecessarily are not held accountable for their conduct." Litigation still continues against Beck and the city of LA as they got another ruling in their favor in July 2019. Number 2. Harold Hill. Back in October 1990, Harold Hill and his co-defendant Dan Young Jr. were convicted for the rape and murder of Kathy Morgan. This alleged gruesome incident occurred in Southside Chicago, where Kathy's body was found in a burning building. Detectives Kenneth Bordeaux and John Halloran were assigned the case, and 17 months later got a confession out of a man named Peter Williams. Williams alleged that he, along with Hill and Young, committed the heinous crime. In 1992, Young and Hill also confessed to the crime. But this is where things begin to get murky. When investigations began, it soon came to light that Williams had been in jail when the crime was committed. This resulted in prosecutors abandoning the case against Williams, but they were still going after Hill and Young. Apart from Williams' questionable alibi, the circumstances of Hill and Young's confessions are also quite suspicious. According to Hill, the investigating officers Kenneth Bordeaux and John Halloran slapped him, struck him in the ribs, and yelled at him. He claimed that he was subjected to physical and mental stress until he felt compelled to confess to crimes that he knew he didn't commit. Harold Hill was only 16 at the time when the crime was committed, but despite his age, Hill was tried jointly with Young, age 31, as an adult. The hearing was presided over by Judge Thomas Durkin in the Cook County Circuit Court. Neither of the two defendants had a criminal record prior to this incident. Separate juries were impaneled for the trial as the confession of both Hill and Young were inadmissible against the other. Prosecutors even called on self-styled forensic odontologist Dr. John Kenny, who linked a bruise and a bite mark on Kathy Morgan's body to the defendants. The juries found Hill and Young guilty of murder, and they were sentenced to life without parole.
Oh. Guilty?
However, things changed in 2004 when DNA tests revealed something shocking. The defense attorney, Kathleen Zellner, requested DNA tests from the scene of the crime. Zellner found that the hairs found at the site and the cellular materials underneath Kathy Morgan's fingernails could not have come from either Young or Hill. Prosecutors disputed these new findings, saying that the hairs were unrelated to the crime and that the cellular material could have come from sweat or drool left over by the recovery teams. Despite prosecutors' stubbornness, a new investigation was initiated, and in 2005, 13 years after their conviction, the charges against Harold and Young were dismissed. They were both free men. However, tragically, 14 months later, Young was killed in a hit-and-run incident in Chicago. Hill, on the other hand, felt that a great injustice had been done to him. He filed a complaint against the city of Chicago, the police, and the two detectives involved with his case. He accused them of forcing a confession and violating his civil rights. The case was set to go to trial, but just before it did, the parties involved reached a settlement. In 2011, the case was settled by the city of Chicago for $1.25 million. Hill's share from the settlement came out to $500,000, with the other $750,000 going into the attorney's fees. Both the detectives, Bordeaux and Halloran, gave $7,500 each for the settlement. But unfortunately, Harold Hill might not be able to rejoice in his victory. Later on, Hill was convicted again for an unrelated armed robbery charge and is now serving 27 years in prison. Despite Hill's later conviction, one thing is clear: our justice system requires a strict restructuring. If you want to watch more such videos, subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time.